The words hung in the air like smoke from burned dinner. Then get a job. I counted the seconds between her blink and my heartbeat 17. That's how long it took for everything to shatter. The kitchen felt smaller after Denise said it. August heat pressed against the windows of my Baton Rouge home, making the air thick enough to chew. I'd been wiping down the same counter for the third time, trying to find something to do with my hands while we talked about the nursing home brochures she'd left on my table. "I don't want to go to a facility, honey," I'd said, soft as I could manage. "This house has 40 years of memories." That's when she looked up from her phone. Not kindly. Not like a daughter looks at her mother. Like a boss looks at an employee who just asked for a raise they can't afford. "Then get a job." The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the microwave blinked 2:47. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice. I counted these things because counting kept me from falling apart right there on my own kitchen floor. My arthritic knees couldn't carry me upstairs without pain. My eyes blurred when the sun went down. I hadn't driven at night in 2 years. But my own daughter, the one I'd stayed up with through fevers, the one I'd sewn Halloween costumes for, the one I'd helped through her divorce, wanted me to get a job at 74 or disappear into a care facility. "Denise, I raised you. I worked part-time at the library for 30 years while raising you kids. I've been paying into this house since—" "Mom." She stood up, keys already in her hand. "I'm trying to help you be realistic. The bills don't stop because you're old." She walked toward the door, and that's when I noticed it. My bank statement, the one that came yesterday, was sitting open on her nightstand. Not on my nightstand, hers. The pages were highlighted in yellow. My pension check stub was there too, the one I thought I'd put in my purse. "Denise, why do you have my—" The front door clicked shut. Her car started. Gravel crunched under her tires as she backed out of the driveway that I'd been maintaining for 2 decades. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the smell of reheated leftovers and the weight of words that couldn't be taken back. The bank statement was still on her nightstand, highlighted in yellow like she was studying for a test. "If your family thinks you're disposable, this gets darker. Subscribe, you need to see what happens next." As Denise walked away, I noticed my bank statement on her nightstand opened, highlighted in yellow. The pension check stub was in the trash. Not shredded, folded once, like an afterthought. My hands shook as I smoothed it flat. It was past midnight when I finally went into Denise's old room. She'd moved back in 6 months ago to help with expenses, but I was starting to wonder who was helping who. The room smelled like her vanilla perfume and something else, stress, maybe. The kind of worry that comes with secrets. The bank statement was right where I'd seen it, spread across her nightstand like homework. 3 months of deposits, withdrawals, transfers, numbers circled in red ink. Notes in the margins written in her handwriting. Grocery money, utilities, mom's medication. But the grocery money line was dated the same day she'd driven to the casino in Lake Charles. I remembered because she'd called me that evening, excited about winning $20 on the slots. $20 from my grocery money. The utility payment was twice what our electric bill had ever been. The medication cost was for prescriptions I'd never taken. I sat on her bed, holding my own financial records, trying to understand how my daughter had turned my pension checks into her casino fund. Each highlighted section told a story I didn't want to believe. My debit card had been missing for 2 weeks. She'd said it was probably lost somewhere in my purse, offered to help me look for it later. Later never came. The mail arrived later each day now. Bills that used to come on Tuesdays were showing up on Fridays, already opened, already handled by Denise. She'd explained it was easier if she organized everything for me, less confusing. I'd believed her. I'd been grateful. Financial abuse starts small, then swallows everything. Subscribe before someone you love becomes a statistic. In my husband's old Bible, tucked behind his bookmark at Psalms, I found something that made my heart race. Harold's business card. Harold Morrison, Notary Public, Houston, Texas. On the back, in my husband's handwriting, "Ruth, call if you ever need backup." My husband had been gone 5 years. Harold's card looked newer than that. Harold's business card had a Houston address and a handwritten note, "Ruth, call if you ever need backup." His voice hadn't changed in 20 years. Steady, careful, the way notaries talk when they mean business. "Ruth, I've been looking for you." I called Harold at 7 in the morning from my bedroom phone. Denise had left early for what she called errands, but I'd seen the casino flyer on her dashboard. I had maybe 3 hours before she came back. "Harold, it's Ruth Thibodeau. I found your card in my husband's Bible." Silence. Then, "Ruth, honey, I've been hoping you'd call. I've got boxes of your husband's papers sitting in my office. Legal papers, important ones." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What kind of papers?" "The kind that show you own more than you think you do. The kind your daughter might not know about." Harold had been my husband's friend for 40 years, worked with him in the oil refineries before they both retired. When my husband got sick, Harold helped him organize all the paperwork, insurance claims, worker compensation settlements, property deeds. Harold was the one who made sure everything was filed correctly. "Ruth, your husband was smart. He set things up so you'd be protected, but protection only works if you know it exists." I told him about the bank statements, the missing debit card, the casino trips, the nursing home brochures. I told him about Denise's cold words in the kitchen and how she'd highlighted my financial records like she was planning something. Harold listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Ruth, I need to drive down there, Saturday morning. Can you meet me somewhere your daughter won't see us?" "Why Saturday?" "Because what I have to show you changes everything, and you're going to need time to decide what to do with it." He told me about the file boxes in his Houston office. Documents my husband had signed and sealed before he died. Papers that proved I owned assets Denise didn't know existed. A trust fund from the workers' compensation settlement that had been earning interest for years. A deed that was never properly transferred. "Harold, are you saying?" "I'm saying your husband made sure you'd never be powerless, but power only works if you use it. One phone call changes everything, but only if you make it. Subscribe to see how courage sounds over the phone." We arranged to meet at the coffee shop by the library, the one where I used to work. Harold would bring the documents. I would bring questions I'd been afraid to ask. "Ruth, there's one more thing. Don't tell anyone I'm coming. Not yet. These papers. If someone's been managing your finances without your knowledge, they might not want you to see what I'm bringing." "You think Denise knows about the trust fund?" "I think your daughter's been making plans based on what she thinks you don't have. Saturday you'll learn what you actually own." Harold said, "I'll be there Saturday. And Ruth, don't tell anyone I'm coming." The box was heavier than it looked. Harold set it on my kitchen table like he was placing evidence in front of a jury. Saturday morning came with clear skies and church bells. Denise had driven to Shreveport for what she called a girls' weekend, but I'd seen her pack the good jewelry. The kind you wear to casinos when you're feeling lucky. Harold looked older than I remembered, but his handshake was firm and his eyes were sharp. He'd driven 3 hours from Houston with a banker's box full of documents that would change my life. "Ruth, before we open this, I need you to understand something. Your husband didn't just leave you a house and some savings. He left you independence. The question is, what are you going to do with it? What if everything you thought you owned was actually yours? Ever discovered you had power you never knew existed?" Harold opened the box like he was performing surgery. The first document he pulled out was a deed. My house deed, dated 3 years before my husband died. My name was the only name on it. Not joint ownership, not shared property, mine. "Denise thinks she's going to inherit this house when you die," Harold said. "But you can't inherit something that's already yours. This house has been in your name alone for 8 years. The second document was thicker, a trust fund account statement from a bank in New Orleans. The balance made me sit down hard in my kitchen chair. $47,000. From a workers' compensation settlement my husband had received after his plant accident. The money had been sitting there, earning compound interest, waiting for me to need it. "Harold, I never knew about this account. Your husband wanted it to be your emergency fund, money that no one else could touch, couldn't spend, couldn't gamble away. He made me promise to tell you about it if anyone ever tried to make you feel powerless. Knowledge is power, but only if you use it fast. Subscribe. Timing is everything in these battles." The third document was the one that made my hands shake. A copy of my husband's will, properly notarized and filed with the parish courthouse. It included specific instructions about my care, my independence, and my right to make my own decisions about where I lived. "Ruth, Your husband wrote this paragraph specifically for you." Harold pointed to a section highlighted in his own careful handwriting. He wrote, "Ruth has given her whole life to this family. Now the family must protect her right to live with dignity, in her own home, making her own choices for as long as she is able." I started to cry. Not sad tears, angry tears. Tears for all the months I'd felt like a burden, felt like I was asking too much by wanting to stay in my own house, with my own things and my own memories. "There's more," Harold said gently. He pulled out bank statements showing regular deposits into the trust fund account. "This settlement pays out quarterly dividends. You've been getting money every 3 months for the past 5 years. It goes directly into this account, where it's been safe." "Harold, Denise doesn't know about any of this." "No. And from what you've told me about the casino trips and the highlighted bank statements, that might be a good thing." Harold pulled out a bank statement. "This account has been earning interest for 5 years. Denise has no legal access." We spread the bank statements like a crime board. 3 months of grocery money lined up with 3 casino trips. Harold didn't smile. My kitchen table had never held so much truth at one time. Harold arranged the documents in chronological order while I made coffee with shaking hands. The evidence of my daughter's betrayal was laid out in neat stacks, her lies on the left, my hidden assets on the right. "Ruth, we need to be detectives now," Harold said, pulling reading glasses from his shirt pocket. "Show me every bank statement, every receipt, every piece of paper that doesn't make sense." I brought out the shoebox where I kept my financial records. Harold whistled low when he saw how many statements had been opened and highlighted before I'd ever seen them. "Look at this pattern," he said, pointing to 3 months of identical transactions. "Every time you got a pension check, there was an immediate transfer to checking. Then, 2 days later, a cash withdrawal for exactly half the amount." She said it was for groceries. Harold spread out 3 casino receipts I'd found in Denise's jacket pocket when I was doing laundry. Each receipt was dated exactly 2 days after my pension deposits. Each receipt showed losses that matched the cash withdrawals from my account. "Your grocery money was buying her slot machine time." The pattern got worse as we dug deeper. Harold showed me how to look at the timestamps on my bank account. Withdrawals made at 2 a.m. on Sundays, transfers authorized while I was at church on Wednesday mornings. Online banking activity during hours when I was asleep. "Ruth, someone's been managing your account like it's their own personal casino fund. Every family has secrets, some cost you everything. Subscribe so you recognize the patterns early." Harold pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. "This is where it gets criminal," he said quietly. Inside were photocopies of documents with my signature, except I'd never signed them. Authorization forms for account changes. Permission slips for automatic transfers. A power of attorney form that would give Denise complete control over my finances. "I never signed these, Harold." "I know. Look at the signature. Look at how your name is written." He placed one of the forged documents next to a Christmas card I'd signed last year. The difference was obvious. My real signature was shaky from arthritis. The fake signatures were smooth, confident, written by someone with steady young hands. "She's been practicing my signature." The final piece of evidence was the one that made everything clear. A printed email from Denise's account to a guardianship lawyer in New Orleans. The subject line read, "Elderly mother, possible dementia, financial management needed." The email was dated 3 weeks before our kitchen conversation about the nursing home. Harold, she was planning this the whole time. Planning, documenting, and filing paperwork to have you declared incompetent so she could control your money legally. The forged guardianship letter was dated 3 weeks ago, filed, but not yet processed. "How much time does Ruth have?" "What's your guess?" The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and justice. She looked at our evidence and said, "We can stop this today." Monday morning, Harold and I drove to New Orleans. The legal aid office was in an old building downtown, the kind with high ceilings and creaky floors that made you feel like important things happened there. Attorney Margaret Wells was younger than I expected, but her handshake was firm and her questions were sharp. "Mrs. Thibodeau, you've brought me a textbook case of elder financial abuse," she said, flipping through our evidence folders. Forged signatures, unauthorized transactions, attempted guardianship fraud. This is criminal. She spread Harold's documents across her desk, next to the evidence of Denise's theft. The contrast was stark. On one side, my husband's careful planning to protect me. On the other, my daughter's careful planning to rob me. The good news is your assets are protected. The trust fund, the house deed, those are ironclad. The bad news is your daughter has already filed preliminary paperwork to have you declared incompetent. My stomach dropped. Can she do that? She can try, but not with what I'm about to file. Margaret opened her laptop and started typing. Emergency protective order. Asset freeze on any accounts with joint access. Immediate cease and desist on all guardianship proceedings. Harold leaned forward. How fast can you make this happen? I'm filing electronically right now. Judge Patterson handles emergency hearings on Mondays. If she's available, we could have protection in place by this afternoon. Legal protection works, but only if you ask for it. Subscribe to see what real advocacy looks like. Margaret explained the process while she worked. Emergency orders to freeze Denise's access to any accounts with my name on them. A restraining order preventing her from signing documents on my behalf. Most importantly, a competency evaluation by an independent doctor, not someone Denise could influence. Mrs. Thibodeau, I need to ask you something difficult. Do you want to press criminal charges? I thought about it. About the years of staying up with sick children, the sacrifices, the love I'd poured into raising Denise. About the cold look in her eyes when she told me to get a job. I want her to stop. I want to be safe. I want to stay in my house. Then we focus on protection first, punishment second. Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened, then smiled. Judge Patterson will see us at 2 o'clock. She's reviewed the preliminary filing and wants to hear testimony. What kind of testimony? Harold asked. The kind where Ruth tells her story and Denise tries to explain why she thought stealing from her mother was acceptable. The protection order was granted in 40 minutes. Now we had to serve it. Court filing or family confrontation, which comes first? I practiced the words in front of my bathroom mirror. I know about the casino trips. My reflection looked stronger than I felt. Tuesday morning, Harold helped me organize everything we'd need for the confrontation with Denise. She was supposed to come back from Shreveport that evening, and Margaret had advised me to serve the protection order in person, with a witness present. Ruth, remember what we talked about, Harold said as we arranged the evidence packets on my kitchen table. Stick to the facts. Don't let her make this about emotions or family loyalty. This is about theft, forgery, and fraud. I felt like I was preparing for war in my own kitchen. The same table where I'd fed my children breakfast for 20 years was now covered with legal documents proving one of those children had betrayed me. What if she denies everything? Then we show her the evidence. The casino receipts, the forged signatures, the email timestamps. The law doesn't care about her excuses. Harold had made copies of everything. One set for Denise, one set for our records, one set for the court. Each folder told the same story. Systematic theft disguised as caregiving. I practiced different scenarios. What if she cried? What if she got angry? What if she tried to turn it around and blame me for being suspicious? Harold, what if she says she was just trying to help? Then you ask her to explain the casino receipts. Help doesn't involve gambling away your mother's grocery money. The hardest part was accepting that this conversation would change everything between us. There would be no going back to pretending things were normal. No more letting her handle my finances. No more trusting her with my mail, my bank card, my signature. Ruth, you're not destroying your relationship with Denise. She already did that when she started stealing from you. You're just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. By evening, I was as ready as I could be. The legal documents were served and filed. The evidence was organized. Harold would stay with me during the confrontation for safety and as a witness. At 6:30, I heard Denise's car in the driveway. She was humming when she walked through the front door, keys jingling, carrying shopping bags from stores I knew she couldn't afford on her part-time job. "Mom, I'm home! I brought you some of those cookies you like." She walked into the kitchen and stopped. The evidence folders were spread across the table. Harold was sitting in her usual chair. I was standing by the sink, holding the protection order. Denise's car pulled into the driveway. The papers were ready. I was not. I slid the bank statement across the table. Denise looked at it like it was a spider. Then she looked at me different than before. "What is this?" she asked, but her voice had changed. The casual confidence was gone. She glanced at Harold, then at the folders spread across the table, then back at me. "It's your casino receipts next to my grocery money withdrawals," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "Same dates, same amounts. Ever watch someone realize their scam just died? Have you seen panic disguised as anger?" Denise set down her shopping bag slowly. She looked at the evidence like she was calculating something in her head. "Mom, you're upset about nothing. I've been helping you with bills. You've been stealing from me." I opened the first folder and pulled out 3 months of bank statements. "Look at these timestamps. 2 a.m. withdrawals while I'm sleeping. Transfers made during church on Wednesday mornings. You've been managing my account like your personal piggy bank. I have power of attorney." "No, you don't." Harold spoke for the first time since she'd arrived. He pulled out the legal documents. "You have forged power of attorney. We compared your fake signature to your mother's real one. They don't match." Denise's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, then something that looked like trapped. "Harold, this isn't your business." Stealing from a 74-year-old woman is everyone's business. Truth hits different when you have receipts. Subscribe, you'll need this energy for your own battles. I opened the second folder. "Denise, explain this email to me." I slid the printout across the table. "You sent this to a guardianship lawyer 3 weeks before you suggested the nursing home. You were planning to have me declared incompetent so you could control my money legally." She read the email, and I watched the last of her confidence crumble. "Mom, I was just exploring options. Options that involved calling me demented and financially irresponsible." I pulled out another document. "This is your correspondence with a real estate agent. You were getting my house appraised while telling me I couldn't afford to live here. I was trying to help you plan. You were trying to help yourself to my assets." Harold's voice was calm but firm. "Ruth, show her the trust fund documents." This was the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating. I opened the third folder and pulled out the bank statements from the account Denise didn't know existed. Her eyes went wide when she saw the balance. "What is that?" "It's the workers' compensation settlement from your father's plant accident. It's been earning interest for 5 years in an account you have no legal access to. The money you thought didn't exist." Denise stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. I could see her recalculating everything: her plans, her timeline, her assumptions about my helplessness. "You've been living here for 6 months, telling me I couldn't afford groceries while you gambled away my pension checks. Meanwhile, I had financial security you didn't even know about. Mom, I never meant. You never meant to get caught." I pulled out the final folder. "This is a protection order from Judge Patterson in New Orleans. You're legally prohibited from accessing any account with my name on it. You cannot sign documents on my behalf, and you cannot continue the guardianship proceedings." Denise looked at the legal paperwork, then at Harold, then at me. The woman who had told me to get a job was realizing she'd just lost her job managing my money. "You can't prove intent," she said finally, grasping for something to defend. I opened the second folder. The printout showed her Gmail timestamp: 2:47 a.m., 3 days before she suggested the nursing home. Subject line: Mom's house appraisal. "Folder number 2 is your digital footprint," I said, spreading the printed emails across the table. "Every search, every email, every plan you made behind my back." Denise's face went pale as she saw her own words printed in black and white. Harold had helped me request the metadata from her email account through Margaret's legal channels, and what we'd found was damning. Email number 1: "You contacted a real estate agent asking for a quick sale estimate on my address." Email number 2: "You researched nursing home costs in 3 different parishes." Email number 3: "You Googled how to get power of attorney for elderly parent." I pointed to the timestamps. All of these were sent in the middle of the night, weeks before our kitchen conversation. "You weren't reacting to my needs, Denise. You were executing a plan." She tried to interrupt, but Harold held up his hand. "Let your mother finish. The real estate agent emailed you back with a market analysis. You asked specifically about estate sale conditions and rapid liquidation options. Those aren't terms someone uses when they're trying to help their mother. Those are terms someone uses when they're planning to cash out. Digital footprints never lie. Your families might surprise you. Subscribe. This evidence gets deeper." The worst email was the one to the guardianship attorney. In her own words, Denise had described me as increasingly confused about finances and unable to make sound decisions about living arrangements. She'd painted a picture of a helpless woman who needed protection from her own. Poor judgment. According to your email, I was showing signs of dementia. According to your email, I was giving money to strangers and forgetting to pay bills. According to your email, I was a danger to myself. I looked at her directly. Which one of us was lying to professionals to get control of money that didn't belong to them? The final piece of evidence was a forwarded email from a casino in Lake Charles. They'd sent Denise promotional offers for preferred customers with her play history attached. The dates matched perfectly with my missing pension money. Your casino rewards card shows 14 visits in 3 months. Every visit happened within 48 hours of a withdrawal from my account. Harold pulled out a calculator. Ruth, show her the total. I'd already done the math. $4,700. That's how much of my pension money you gambled away while telling me we couldn't afford groceries. Denise sat back in her chair, staring at the evidence spread across the table. Her elaborate plan had been reduced to a paper trail of greed and lies. The real estate agent had already been contacted twice. Mrs. Johnson from next door knocked at exactly the right moment. She'd been watching through her kitchen window for months. The knock at the door came just as Denise was trying to find words to explain away the evidence. Through the window, I could see my neighbor, Mary Johnson, standing on the porch with a manila folder in her hands. Ruth, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I heard voices and thought you might need backup, she said when I opened the door. She glanced past me at Denise and Harold sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by documents. Is this about the financial situation? Denise's eyes widened. Mrs. Johnson, this is a private family matter. Actually, it became a neighborhood matter when you started intercepting Ruth's mail, Mary said, stepping into the kitchen. Ruth, I've been keeping notes. She opened her folder and pulled out a small notebook. 3 months of observations, dates, times, license plates, visitor patterns. I've been worried about you. Harold gestured for Mary to sit down. What kind of things did you notice? Mail delivery at 11 a.m., but Ruth didn't get her mail until after 3 p.m. Denise would intercept it, take it inside, then bring Ruth only certain pieces later. Mary flipped through her notebook. I started paying attention after I saw Ruth looking confused about missing packages. My heart sank. The neighbors had been watching my daughter steal from me in plain sight. There were the visitors, too, people I'd never seen before coming by when Ruth was at church or grocery shopping. Denise would meet them in the driveway, exchange paperwork, sometimes money. What kind of people? I asked. Professional-looking. Suits and briefcases. One had a real estate company car. Another had legal documents. They never stayed long, but they always left something behind. Mary pulled out a photograph taken from her kitchen window. It showed Denise talking to a man in a suit by his car, handing him what looked like keys. I took pictures because it seemed odd. Why would strangers need keys to your house when you weren't here? Denise looked trapped. Those were just estimates, consultations. For services Ruth never requested, Harold said. Mary, did you document the dates? Mary nodded and showed us her calendar notes. Every visitor date matched up with emails in Denise's digital footprint. The real estate agent's visit, the appraiser, the locksmith who'd made extra keys. The worst part was watching Ruth look confused about her own mail and deliveries. Mary said. She'd mentioned missing bank statements or bills she thought should have come, and I knew Denise had them. Why didn't you say something earlier? I asked. I wasn't sure if it was my place. Family business is complicated. But when I saw Harold arrive with those file boxes, I figured Ruth was finally getting the help she needed. A knock came at the back door. Through the window, I saw 2 more neighbors. Bob from across the street and Elena from the corner house. They were both carrying notebooks. Looks like word spread, Harold said. Mary called through the door. Come on in. Ruth's got backup now. 3 neighbors had documentation. None of them trusted Denise. The courthouse steps felt like walking into battle. Harold carried the briefcase. I carried 20 years of suppressed anger. Thursday morning, Margaret Wells met us at the Orleans Parish Courthouse with a folder thick enough to choke a horse. The neighbor's testimony had added weight to our case, but now we needed the legal system to take us seriously. "Ruth, are you ready for this?" Margaret asked as we climbed the stone steps. "Once we file these charges, there's no backing down. Elder financial abuse, forgery, attempted fraud, these are serious crimes." I looked up at the courthouse, all columns and carved words about justice. At 74, I'd never imagined I'd be filing criminal charges against my own daughter. But I'd also never imagined my own daughter would steal from me while planning to put me away. "I'm ready." Inside, the halls echoed with footsteps and whispered legal talk. Margaret guided us to the filing desk, where a clerk stamped our documents with the kind of official thud that means business. "Formal complaint for elder financial abuse," Margaret announced, sliding the first set of papers across the counter. "Emergency restraining order against Denise Marie Thibodeau. Asset protection order for all accounts in Ruth Thibodeau's name." The clerk reviewed our documentation, bank statements, email printouts, neighbor testimonies, Harold's trust fund documents, the forged signatures. Each piece of evidence got its own stamp, its own case number, its own place in the legal system. "Ma'am, this is comprehensive," the clerk said to me. "Most elder abuse cases come in with just complaints and tears. You've got documentation going back months." Courts believe documentation, not tears. Subscribe, see how preparation beats desperation every time. Harold opened his briefcase one more time. "We've also got this." He pulled out the original guardianship petition Denise had filed, alongside the evidence proving she'd forged my medical assessments. "She told the court I was showing signs of dementia," I explained to the clerk, "but I never saw a doctor for that evaluation. The signatures are fake." The clerk's eyebrows went up. "That's not just elder abuse, that's court fraud." Margaret nodded. "We're requesting an immediate competency evaluation by an independent physician, full financial audit of all joint accounts, and temporary restraining order preventing further legal filings on Mrs. Thibodeau's behalf." 20 minutes later, we had case numbers, court dates, and official protection. The legal system had listened to a 4-year-old grandmother and decided she was worth defending. "When's the hearing?" I asked. "Judge Patterson can see us tomorrow at 10 a.m., emergency session." Margaret gathered the stamped papers. "Ruth, by this time tomorrow, you'll either have full legal protection or we'll know exactly what we're fighting." Walking down those courthouse steps felt different than walking up them. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a plaintiff. I had case numbers and court dates and legal representation. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing, 48 hours to resolve everything. The judge read the evidence timeline aloud. Each date hit Denise like a physical blow. Her lawyer kept looking at his watch. Friday morning, courtroom 3B felt like the most important room in the world. Judge Patterson was a woman about my age, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd spent 30 minutes reviewing our case before we even walked in. Denise sat at the defendant's table with a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd tried to dress respectfully, navy blue dress, minimal jewelry, but she kept glancing at the exit like she was measuring the distance. "Mrs. Thibodeau." Judge Patterson addressed me directly. "Please tell the court in your own words what happened." I stood up, my arthritic knees creaking, and told my story. The kitchen conversation about getting a job, the missing bank statements, the casino receipts matched to my pension withdrawals, the forged signatures, the guardianship petition I'd never requested. "Your Honor, I raised 3 children while working part-time for 30 years. I've been managing my own finances since I was 18. I don't have dementia. I don't need a guardian, and I certainly don't need someone stealing my grocery money to gamble with." The judge nodded. "Miss Thibodeau," she addressed Denise, "how do you respond to these allegations?" Denise's lawyer whispered something to her. She stood up slowly. "Your Honor, I was trying to help my mother organize her finances. Sometimes the money got mixed up." "Mixed up?" Judge Patterson held up the casino receipts. "These withdrawals from your mother's account match your gambling receipts to the penny. That's not mixed up, that's systematic. Justice served cold tastes sweetest. Subscribe, you'll want to remember this feeling." Margaret presented our evidence in chronological order. The timeline painted a clear picture. Months of financial manipulation leading up to a planned guardianship grab. Each document built on the last, creating a case so solid even Denise's lawyer looked defeated. "Your Honor," Margaret continued, "the defendant forged medical evaluations claiming her mother was incompetent. She used these false documents to file for guardianship while simultaneously draining her mother's accounts." Judge Patterson studied the signature comparisons. "Miss Thibodeau, did you forge your mother's signature on these medical forms?" I was trying to help her get the care she needed." "That's not what I asked. Did you forge these signatures?" Silence. Denise looked at her lawyer, then at me, then back at the judge. "Yes, Your Honor." The courtroom was quiet enough to hear the air conditioning humming. Judge Patterson made notes on her legal pad, taking her time. "Mrs. Ruth Thibodeau, I find you to be mentally competent, financially capable, and the victim of a systematic fraud." She looked at Denise. "Miss Denise Thibodeau, I find you guilty of elder financial abuse, forgery, and attempted court fraud." The judge's words kept coming. Immediate restitution of all stolen funds, 5 years probation, mandatory financial counseling, no access to any accounts bearing her mother's name. "Furthermore," Judge Patterson continued, "any future legal filings regarding Mrs. Ruth Thibodeau's care must be approved by this court and include independent medical evaluation." She banged her gavel once. "Elder abuse prevention successful." I felt Harold squeeze my shoulder. Margaret smiled for the first time all week. Denise stared at the table like she was trying to disappear into the wood grain. The judge's final order included a phrase I'll never forget: "Elder abuse prevention successful." Denise's apology sounded rehearsed. Her offer to make things right sounded expensive. I listened with new ears. 2 weeks after the court victory, we met in Margaret's office for what she called a family settlement conference. Denise had requested it through her lawyer, claiming she wanted to repair our relationship without dragging things through more legal proceedings. She looked smaller than I remembered. The confident woman who'd told me to get a job had been replaced by someone who couldn't make eye contact. "Mom, I want to apologize," she began, reading from notes she'd written on a legal pad. "I made some poor decisions about your finances." "I thought I was helping, but I realize now that I was wrong," Margaret interrupted. "Miss Thibodeau, are you acknowledging that you stole money from your mother's accounts?" Yes. "But I always planned to pay it back." "With casino winnings?" Harold asked dryly. Denise's lawyer put his hand on her arm. "My client is prepared to make full restitution, plus agree to supervised visitation and financial counseling." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The lines around her eyes, the nervous way she twisted her wedding ring, the defeat in her shoulders. She'd gambled away more than my pension money. She'd gambled away our relationship. "How much?" I asked. "Total restitution comes to $6,200, Margaret read from her notes. "That includes the documented theft plus court costs and attorney fees." "I can pay it back over time," Denise said quickly. "Monthly payments, and I'll go to the financial counseling, and I'll never touch your accounts again." "Denise, why did you do it?" I asked the question that had been eating at me for weeks. She finally looked at me. "I was drowning, Mom. Credit cards, rent, car payments. When I moved in with you, I thought it would just be temporary help. Then I saw your pension checks and it seemed like you had more than enough. So you decided to help yourself. I was going to pay it back. The casino was supposed to help me make enough money to pay it back without you ever knowing." Harold shook his head. "That's not how casinos work, Denise." The settlement took an hour to negotiate. Full restitution over 12 months. Mandatory financial counseling through Catholic charities. Supervised visits only, with Harold or Margaret present. No access to my mail, my accounts, or my legal documents. The settlement included one condition Denise didn't expect: mandatory financial counseling. The home health aide arrived on time, exactly as I'd requested. My choice, my schedule, my dignity intact. 6 months after the courtroom victory, my life looked completely different. I'd used money from the trust fund Harold had discovered to hire Maria, a home health aide who came 3 times a week to help with grocery shopping, cleaning, and the heavier household tasks my arthritic hands couldn't manage anymore. The difference was choice. Maria worked for me, not the other way around. She asked what I wanted for dinner instead of telling me what was easiest. She drove me to the library, the bank, The community center, wherever I wanted to go, when I wanted to go. Mrs. Ruth, you want to try the community garden today? Maria asked as she helped me down the front steps. Mrs. Johnson said they have plots available. Independence earned hits different than independence given. Subscribe, see what strength looks like at 74. The community garden was behind the library where I'd worked for 30 years. Small plots of vegetables and flowers, tended by neighbors I recognized but had never really talked to. Mary Johnson was there, weeding around tomato plants and waving me over. Ruth, perfect timing. I saved you the plot right next to mine. The garden manager, a young man named David, showed me around. What kind of experience do you have growing things, Mrs. Thibodeau? I raised 3 children and kept a house for 40 years. I figure vegetables can't be much harder. He laughed. They're probably easier. Plants don't talk back. I chose simple things for my first season. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, for cooking. David helped me plan the layout, explaining which plants needed more sun, which ones grew better next to each other. The beautiful thing about gardening, he said as we marked out the rows, is that you get to start over every season. Bad year? Try again next spring. Harold visited every Sunday now, bringing coffee and updates on his own life in Houston. We'd sit on my front porch and talk about everything except Denise and the legal case. He told me about his grandchildren, his retirement hobbies, his concerns about getting older alone. Ruth, you've inspired me to get my own affairs in order, he said one afternoon, making sure no one can take advantage of me the way Denise tried to take advantage of you. Denise and I exchanged Christmas cards. Nothing more, nothing less. She was working at a department store in Lake Charles, living in a small apartment, attending her court-mandated financial counseling. The monthly restitution payments arrived on time, deposited directly into my account without personal contact. The community garden plot came with something unexpected: 3 new friendships and a weekly potluck invitation. The thank you card from Harold's granddaughter was simple. You showed me what brave looks like. I taped it to my refrigerator next to my bank statement. A year later, my kitchen looked the same but felt completely different. The bank statements that had once been hidden were now spread openly on the counter each month, reviewed by me and filed by me. The refrigerator held grocery lists written in my own handwriting, doctor appointments scheduled when I wanted them, and photographs from the community garden potluck dinners. What does victory look like when you're 74 and fighting for your life? Ever realized your strength when you thought you had none left? Harold's granddaughter Emma had written the thank you card after hearing about my court case. She was 22, just starting her adult life, and Harold had told her the story as a cautionary tale about family finances and legal protection. Grandpa Harold says you didn't let anyone push you around, even when it was family, she wrote. I want to be that brave when I'm your age. When I'm your age. As if being 75 was some distant country she might never reach. But I understood what she meant. Strength looks different at every age. At 22, it might mean standing up to a boss or choosing the right career. At 75, it meant refusing to disappear quietly when your own child tried to erase you. The community garden had become the center of my social life. Tuesday mornings were for weeding and watering. Thursday afternoons were for harvesting and sharing. Saturday mornings were for the potluck breakfasts, where 8 neighbors gathered around picnic tables to plan the next season's plantings. Ruth, you should tell your story to the senior center, suggested Bob, my neighbor who grew the best okra in Louisiana. Other folks need to hear how you fought back. I'd been thinking about that myself. Margaret Wells had mentioned that elder financial abuse was more common than people realized, often hidden in families where victims felt too ashamed or scared to speak up. What would I say? Tell them what you told the judge, that being old doesn't mean being powerless, that family doesn't get to steal from you just because they're family. Your story matters more than you know. Subscribe, someone needs to hear how you survived. Maria still came twice a week, but now it felt like friendship instead of necessity. She brought her grandmother to the garden potlucks, and we'd compare stories about raising children in different generations. Her grandmother spoke mostly Spanish, but we understood each other perfectly when we talked about the weight of loving people who sometimes disappointed you. Harold's Sunday visits had expanded to include his son and daughter-in-law, who drove down from Dallas once a month. They were planning their own retirement, asking questions about legal protection and financial security. They'd learned from my experience without having to live through it themselves. The final restitution payment from Denise arrived on a Tuesday in March. $6,200, paid back over 18 months as promised. With it came a short note. "Mom, I'm doing better. I hope you are too." I was doing better. Better than I'd been in years, maybe decades. The trust fund Harold had found gave me security. The legal victory gave me respect. The community garden gave me purpose. But the best part was the simplest. I was making my own choices about my own life. The kitchen table where it all began now holds my garden planning notebook, Harold's weekly letters, and a small framed photo. Me at 74, smiling like someone who finally knows her worth.